If your barley, your grain, your whole garden produces less than the same patch did a generation ago, you have probably been told it is the weather, or the soil getting tired, or simply bad luck. It is none of those, and there is a quieter reason that Swedish researchers have spent the last few years putting hard numbers on. By the end of this video, I will show you exactly what they found at the Agricultural University in Uppsala, why almost nobody in the fertilizer business wants to repeat it out loud, and the 3 changes you can make to your own ground. This season that cost almost nothing. None of this requires a single new product, which is precisely why it stays so quiet. Stay with me, because the 3rd change is the one that surprised even the scientists. Let us start with a strange fact. If you took a wild ancestor of modern barley, the kind that grew on hillsides thousands of years ago, and you planted it next to a sleek modern variety bred for maximum yield, something unexpected happens underground. The old plant is often far better at making friends, and by friends I mean fungi, specifically a group called arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, which I will simply call root fungi from here on. These root fungi thread themselves into a plant's roots, and then reach far out into the soil with filaments thinner than any root hair. They behave like an extension of the root system, hunting down water and scattered nutrients the plant could never reach on its own, and trading them back in exchange for a little sugar. This is not folklore. It is one of the oldest partnerships in the history of land plants, older than seeds, older than flowers. Now here is the uncomfortable part that the research keeps circling back to. When we bred modern grain varieties, we bred them inside fields already flooded with fertilizer. A plant swimming in cheap phosphate has no reason to feed a fungus to go find phosphate for it. So, over decades of breeding in those rich conditions, we may have quietly selected for plants that are worse at the partnership their ancestors depended on. Studies comparing elite barley varieties with their wild progenitors have asked exactly this question: whether the modern pampered plant has partly forgotten how to cooperate with the soil that feeds it. And the Swedish work takes it a step further. Researchers at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences in Uppsala looked at what happens when you stop growing a single uniform variety and instead grow a mixture of 2 different barley types in the same plot. What they observed below ground is the interesting part. The different roots spread and shared the space differently, and the root fungi helped the plants reach pockets of phosphorus that were spread unevenly through the soil, finding a rich spot earlier and using it better than a single uniform crop could. The mixture, in other words, behaved less like a factory and more like an ecosystem. Before I go further, I want to stop for just 2 minutes, because some of you are going to want the full step-by-step version of everything I'm about to explain, written down with the exact methods. I have put together a complete written guide called the Living Soil Method that walks through all of this in plain language, and I will tell you exactly where to find it in a moment, but I'm not going to hide the real mechanism behind it. You're going to leave this video knowing how it actually works, whether you ever read a word of the guide. That is a promise. So let me give you the mechanism now, plainly. The reason your grandparents' plot often outproduced yours has very little to do with them working harder, and a great deal to do with a living network in the soil that modern methods accidentally switch off. There are 3 things that switch it off, and 3 matching things you can do to switch it back on. The first switch is phosphorus. This is the one the research is clearest about, and the one the fertilizer aisle will never highlight. When soil phosphorus is very high, the plant simply stops inviting the root fungi in. Why pay a fungus to fetch phosphorus when phosphorus is everywhere already? Multiple controlled studies show the same thing, that heavy phosphate dramatically reduces how much the fungi colonize the roots, and that an optimum, moderate level actually encourages them. So the first change is almost insultingly simple. Stop pouring on high phosphate fertilizer year after year on ground that already tested rich. You're paying money to shut down the very system that would feed your plants for free. Test your soil, and if phosphorus is already plentiful, ease off. That single restraint can begin waking the network within 1 season. The second switch is disturbance. Every time soil is turned over hard, and often, the delicate filaments of the fungal network are sliced apart, like tearing up a city's road system every spring and wondering why deliveries are slow. Intensive tillage and the heavy use of mineral fertilizer are both linked in the research to a steady decline in the diversity and presence of these root fungi across farmland. So the second change is to disturb less. You do not need to convert to some rigid no-dig doctrine overnight. You simply stop deep turning ground that does not need it, leave the underground network intact, and let the structure rebuild. Less work, not more, and a more connected soil for it. The third switch is the one I promised would surprise you, and it surprised the scientists too. It is sameness. A field of one single identical variety is a network with very little to work with. The Uppsala mixture study points at something deeper, that diversity itself, even just 2 barley types sharing a plot, changes how roots and fungi divide the underground and how efficiently they hunt down scattered nutrients. Variety, it turns out, is not a decoration, it is a function. The plants forage differently, they root at different depths, and together with the fungi, they cover ground that any single uniform crop would miss. So the third change is to break the monoculture, even a little. Mix 2 compatible varieties of the same grain in one bed. Interplant. Let the garden hold more than one kind of root at a time. Your grandparents did this without a theory for it, because a mixed plot was simply normal, and normal happened to be right. Now you can see why this stays quiet. There's no bag to sell at the end of it. Easing off phosphate, tilling less, and mixing varieties are 3 things that make you buy less, not more, and an industry built on the annual sale of inputs has no reason to put them on a billboard. The Swedish researchers are not hiding anything. The papers are public. It is just that nobody amplifies advice that ends with spend less money. This is the part I want to be honest with you about. None of this is a magic trick, and I'm not going to insult you by promising you will triple your harvest in 90 days. Soil is slow, and living things take their time. What the research genuinely supports is that a soil with its fungal network intact holds water better, finds nutrients better, and resists stress better, and that the plant standing in it has a partner working underground that a fertilized monoculture simply does not. If you want the full method written out, with how to read a basic soil test, how to choose 2 barley or grain varieties that pair well, and how to ease into reduced disturbance without losing a season, I've written all of it down in the Living Soil method, and you will find the link pinned in the comment below and in the description. It is the same mechanism I just gave you, only with the exact steps, the soil test thresholds, and the variety pairings laid out one by one. But I meant what I said. You already have the heart of it for free right now. So while you think about that, let me show you the simplest possible way to test all 3 of these in a single corner of your own ground this year, with 2 seed packets and a spade you already own. Take 1 small bed and split it in your mind into 2 halves. On the first half, do what you have always done. On the second half, do only 3 things differently. Skip the phosphate if your soil is already fed. Do not turn the soil deep, just open a shallow furrow. And sow 2 compatible varieties together instead of 1, then simply watch across the season. Watch which half holds green longer in a dry week. Watch which half stands up after heavy rain. Watch where the earthworms gather when you lift a spadeful in autumn, because returning worms are one of the oldest visible signs that the life below has come back. You're not running a laboratory. You're running the same comparison the scientists ran on a scale that fits a single garden, and your own eyes will tell you more than any advertisement ever could. A great many growers who have tried exactly this report that the quieter, less disturbed, more mixed half is the one that carries them through the hard weeks of summer, though, of course, every soil and every season is different, and your results will be your own. There's something else worth saying here, beyond the barley. The same network, the same root fungi, the same logic of less phosphate, less disturbance, and more diversity runs underneath almost everything you grow, from your grain to your vegetables to the fruit trees at the edge of the plot. Learn it once in a single bed, and you have learned something that quietly improves the whole garden for the rest of your growing life. That is why I find this research so worth sharing, and so frustrating that it stays buried under louder, more expensive advice. Knowledge that makes you more self-reliant rarely gets a marketing budget. So here is where I will leave you with a simple picture. Imagine next autumn lifting a spadeful from that quieter half of your bed and finding it dark, crumbling, threaded with pale filaments and alive with worms, while the soil beside it sits pale and tight and tired. That is not a fantasy. That is just a soil with its oldest partnership switched back on. If you want the full written method with the exact steps, it is waiting for you in the Living Soil method, linked in the pinned comment and the description below. And if a single video taught you something the fertilizer aisle never will, then do one small thing for me. Subscribe to this channel, because everything here is built on the same idea, that the most powerful tools in a garden are the ones nobody is trying to sell you. I will see you in the next one.